Hi and welcome to my new completed coloring pages video for April 2026. If you are new to this channel, hi, my name is Ina. If not, welcome back. In April, I colored 16 pages across 11 different books. I'll set them aside briefly and then we get started. I begin with Abenteuer der Blütenelfen, translated to Adventures of the Blossom Fairies by Christel Vogel. In this book, the first page I colored in April was this cute little Easter bunny with a blossom fairy. For the background, I used my Castle Arts watercolor pencils and also for basing. And for the actual coloring, I used my Castle Art soft touch pencils. I also added some metallic watercolor on the wings for the shimmer and a bit of gel pen. For the next page, with the bird's nest, I used watercolors made from Felte pens for the background and also for basing. Then I colored over it with the Castle Art soft touch pencils. For the shimmer on the wings, I again used metallic watercolor. And here as well, the Golden Pentel Hybrid gel pen for the inside of the flowers and the dots on and around the wings. I really like the limited color palette here and how the page turned out overall. That was Abenteuer der Blütenelfen by Christel Vogel. Somehow, Easter already feels like ages ago, but I colored another Easter page in Romantic Country, the second tale by Erie. This page is called The Easter Witch, even though you can't see the witch herself, just her head. On this page, there were really a lot of eggs, over 80, but I still had much fun to coloring them. This was my first page in an Erie book, and it was really fun. I'm curious to try a page with a few fewer details. There are some pages in especially Romantic Country, the first tale, that have very large areas, like this one here. I definitely need to figure out the best way to color those bigger spaces. I don't think I want to do them entirely with colored pencils. But this Easter page with all the details was definitely a lot of fun. I used a mix of Castle Art Soft Touch and Harmonious pencils, and for this purple some Polychromos. And then I used a white Posca marker for some details. This page was the body color with Melinda in color. I'll show you her page here. She went with the classic colors red, yellow, blue and green. I really like her color choices. It's a bit more subdued than mine. but it turned out very harmonious and beautiful. That was Romantic Country, the second tale, by Erie. Next, I colored another Easter-themed page in Bulipa by Diane Dufort. This page with the bunnies, carrots and turnips. For the background, I used my Neocolor tools for the first time, but I applied them quite lightly here. Then I wanted to try the Castle Arts gold pencils in this book. They work very well here, as do the soft touch pencils. For the dots, I used some glitter gel pens. That was Boule de Poire by Diane Dufort. Next, I experimented a bit with white gouache paint because I wanted to cover the lines a little so they wouldn't be as visible, to create a more painted look. At first, I tried this in Tal des Mondes or Moon Valley by Maria Trolle. I colored this camellia. On my first attempt, I diluted the gouache, so it didn't cover very well. But compared to the bumblebee and the caterpillar, you can already see a small difference. I mainly colored the whole thing with Castle Arts gold pencils. And for comparison, I also colored these 3 leaves with the soft touch ones. I still don't have a favorite when it comes to colored pencils over gouache. For the bumblebee's wings, I again used metallic watercolor. And for the highlights in the animal's eyes, I used my Sakura Jelly Roll. Even though there's only that tiny caterpillar on this side, I still count it as a finished page in my statistics. Then I quickly show you my second attempt, which is in In der Natur or Botanicum by Maria Trolle. Again, at the back of the book, I colored this marigold. This time I applied the gouache undiluted, and you can really see that the lines are much more covered. Here too, I colored over it with the Castle Arts gold pencils. Then we return to Moon Valley. Here I colored an entire page, this one with a deer. I painted over the whole page with gouache, or rather not quite the entire page. If you want to see more details, I made a video about it. Feel free to watch it if you haven't yet. For the background, the sky, I used a mix of various water-soluble wax pastels from Herlitz, Jackson, and the Neocolor 2 from Caran d'Ache. Then I used the Castle Art soft touch pencils, and I also added some details with a white Sakura jelly roll and a Posca marker. That was Moon Valley by Maria Trolle. Next, I move on to my Disney coloring book. In my April plans video, I thought the 2 pages I colored in this book would be quick to complete. That turned out not to be the case. First, I colored the Encanto page with a capybara. It didn't take too long, but still longer than I expected. For the background, I used pelican watercolors, and I also used them to base the capybara. Then I colored with various old colored pencils that are no longer available, and some are even no-name pencils. For the highlights in the eyes, I used my Sakura Jelly Roll. And for the dotted line in the background, I used a golden acrylic marker from Avec. This paper is really thin, so it crinkled a lot, but that's okay for me in this book. For the second page, I came up with something a bit special. Just coloring Bambi would have been done very quickly, but I wanted to create a background. I thought of making a kind of a pixel background, but with triangles instead of normal pixels. That really took a long time. Here too, I again used old no-name colored pencils and the Sakura Jelly Roll for the highlight in the eye. Next, I continue with another body color with Melinda, this time in Mythomorphia by Kirby Rosenes. We colored the page with a mountain troll. I based all the greenery and the rocks with Castle Arts watercolor pencils, and then went over them with the soft touch pencils. For the highlights on the waterfalls, I used my Posca marker, and then a Pentel Hybrid gel pen for the earring. For the sky, I used the Castle Arts Harmonious pencils. For a long time, I didn't know what to do with the sky, and I finally decided on a subtle sunrise or sunset with clouds, all kept very soft using the pencils from the Harmonious set. I show you Melinda's page here. She colored hers in a much more magical way than I did, using a lot of acrylic markers. And I think her page turned out really beautiful. Her mountain troll looks truly alive with lots of contrast. And it was a really good idea of hers to color the beard as greenery, while mine is stone. Thank you, Melinda, for the 2 body colors in April. That was Mythomorphia by Kirby Rosenes. Then I continued with another book by Kirby, Dark Fairy Tales. And in this book I colored a double-page spread. This one here with the 3 little pigs. In fact, this double page didn't take much longer than the single page before, because this motif doesn't have as many details. For the sky, I used water-soluble wax crayons from Herlitz, as well as for the bushes. I added them in the background because I thought that if the sky went all the way down, especially here on the right side, it would look a bit strange. So I added a few bushes there. Then I used the Jackson and Neocolor 2 crayons to base most of the elements on the pages. I gave the whole thing depths with the Castle Art soft touch pencils. And if you have seen my video about white ink, then you know that I used Winsor & Newton white ink, a Sakura jelly roll, and also my Posca marker to cover all the lines of the smoke. I have to say the most difficult part for me was the fur in this lower area, where there isn't that typical fur structure. The fur here looked a bit like ribs, but the ribs would be further forward, forming the rib cage, and not at the belly. That's why I decided to go with fur. That was Dark Fairy Tales by Kirby Rosanes. And then in my video about the white ink, I also tested something in Botanicum, right behind the marigold. On the very last page, I colored this leaf with a ladybug. And at the end of April, I quickly colored the dragonfly and the butterfly as well. I based the leaf with white ink and then colored it with the soft touch pencils. The ink has made a smoother surface like gouache does, but the color doesn't appear quite as vibrant on the ink. The butterfly and the dragonfly I colored with the Castle Arts gold pencils. And for the wings, I again used metallic watercolors to create a shine. And since the page was still so empty and I had never used this stencil before, I simply used it for the background and created a gradient in rainbow colors with soft pastels. That was Botanicum by Maria Trolle. Next, I move on to Mythographic Labyrinth by Joseph Kettenbang. In this book, I colored the page with a snail. Here is it. And I have to say, I love this paper. Until recently, I didn't have Neocolor tools, and I never managed to apply the wax pastels, like the Jacksons, really opaque and vibrant on the paper. If I want to layer them, they always reactivated, and yeah, it doesn't work very well. Although that often wasn't even my goal, that the paint is really opaque. But here on this paper, it worked really well to layer them. I did use the Neocolor 2 here, but I'm sure the Jacksons will also work really well on this paper. For coloring, I used my soft touch pencils, as usual, as well as 3 from the Harmonious set for the stone surface, which I first gave a slight pinkish undertone with watercolor pencils. Then I also used the Sakura jelly roll and again metallic watercolors for the wings of the dragonflies and a bit for outlining these magical lanterns. This is definitely one of my favorite pages this month. And the white dots in the background are Winsor & Newton white ink. That was Mythographic Labyrinth by Joseph Kettenbang. Next up are my project books, which I only colored towards the end of the month, aside from Bulipa. In Seasons by Hannah Carlson, I colored a portrait. This one of a woman with magnolias growing from her hair. As I already mentioned in my April plans video, I continued the background from the other side with soft pastels. Then I based the portrait with watercolor pencils and colored over it with the Castle Art soft touch pencils. For the skin, I also used a Faber-Castell Polychromos additionally. And for the highlights, the dots, and the inside of the flowers, I used gel pens and also a white Posca marker to cover the lines. I would say this is also one of my favorite pages this month. That was Seasons by Hannah Carlson. And now I still have a whip in Ivy and the Inky Butterfly. This page here where Ivy is looking out of the door. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to finish this page, but I will continue it first this month. So far, I have only used soft touch colored pencils. Okay, that was Ivy and the Inky Butterfly or Ivy und der magische Schmetterling by Joanna Basford. Those were all my pages from April. And as I already mentioned, my favorite pages are definitely the snail in Mythographic Labyrinth and the woman in Seasons by Hannah Carlson. Which page is your favorite? Feel free to write it in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye and see you next time.